Identifying the characteristics of a quadratic function. We're going to begin by identifying the characteristics when given a graph. The vertex is the highest or lowest point on the parabola, and it's written as an ordered pair. So this point here is the vertex, and that is the ordered pair -2, 4. On this parabola, this would be considered the vertex. And this is in between. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to guess that this is -0.5 and then -3.5. Okay. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into mirror images. So the axis of symmetry is written as x equals, and it's actually the x value of the vertex. So let's go ahead and draw our axis of symmetry, and mine definitely doesn't look perfect. And that would be the line x equals -2. And over here, our axis of symmetry is about right here. And that is the line x equals -0.5. Let's keep moving. The extrema is the minimum or maximum value of the function, and it's written as the minimum at blank or the maximum at blank. So looking at this point right here, this would be the maximum value of the function. It's the highest point. So remember that it's written as the maximum at, and the number is actually the y value of the vertex. So we're looking at how high is this. That is at 4. So this is the maximum at 4. Now for this one, we clearly have a minimum because this is our lowest point on the parabola. So this is a minimum, sorry y'all, minimum at, and again, we're looking at the y value. And remember, we guessed earlier that that is -3.5. The y-intercept, this is the one thing that you guys should already be familiar with. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. And of course, that's also written as an ordered pair. So our y-intercept here would be right there. And we would write that as simply an ordered pair, which is 0, 0. Now over here, our y-intercept is right here. And that appears to be 0, -3. And lastly, we have the x-intercept and the zeros. Now, x-intercept is like the y-intercept. So if the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, the x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis, and it's also written as an ordered pair. So looking at this parabola, we see that the graph crosses the x-axis at 2 places. This ordered pair is -4, 0. And this ordered pair is 0, 0. And over here, we see it also crosses in 2 places. This is -2, 0. And this is 1, 0. All right, so those are your x-intercepts. Now, when we talk about zeros, the zeros are the exact same thing as the x-intercept. Except it's written as x equals, because we're talking about what is the value of x when y equals 0. So you simply just list those numbers. So again, this is a 0 and this is a 0. So we will simply write that as -4 and 0. And over here, -2 and 1. All right, now we're going to move on to identifying the characteristics of the quadratic when we're given an equation in standard form. So on your note sheet, you can see that I've pretty much given you instructions on how to find each of the characteristics that we're going to be looking at. So let's go ahead and begin with our vertex. So to find the x value, you're going to use the equation x equals -b/2a. Okay? So when we're looking at a quadratic in standard form, this coefficient is a, this coefficient is b, and this constant is c. So looking here, I'm going to go ahead. My b is clearly 4. And over here, my a, see that there's nothing there, so that a is 1. So we have negative 4 over 2, which simplifies to be negative 2. So that's the x value of the vertex. Now, to find the y value of the vertex, we simply plug that x value into the function and solve for y. Okay, so y equals negative 2. And again, I'm just plugging it in. Plus 4, negative 2, plus 1. So negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 plus 1. Okay, so now we simply have to combine like terms, and when we combine like terms, we are left with negative 3. So we have our x value, we have our y value, so our vertex, let me do that in a different color because it's going to get crazy looking. Our vertex is negative 2, negative 3. All right, let's move on to our axis of symmetry. Now we're told that the axis of symmetry is the x value of the vertex, and it's written as x equals. So we actually have no work to do here because we're just going to look at what we've already done for the vertex. So I'm simply going to write axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. Okay? Now, let's move on to extrema. For the extrema as well, there's no work to do because we're going to be depending on the vertex, which we've already solved for. So for the extrema, you're going to look at the a of the function. That's this number here, which is 1. If a is positive, the extrema is a minimum. So this is positive, so we know we're going to have a minimum. Sorry, I'm struggling to write today. Minimum at, and then we're also told that the minimum or maximum is the y value of the vertex. So we have a minimum at negative 3 because that's the y value of the vertex. Now, lastly, we just have the y-intercept. And this is probably the intercept, can't spell. This is probably the easiest thing because the y-intercept is simply your c. Okay, and our c is that constant at the end, and we write it as 0y. So that is just going to be 0, 1. All right. So now the second example, I actually want for you guys to go ahead and try by yourself. I've walked through exactly what to do. So go ahead and try this second example by yourself. Pause the video, press play when you want to see what your answer should be. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for example 2. For your vertex, you should have gotten negative 3, 13. The axis of symmetry is x equals negative 3. For the extrema, we have a maximum at 3, and the y-intercept is 0, negative 5. So hopefully you guys did okay. Let's go ahead and move on and try example 3. For example 3, we're going to do the exact same thing we did for example 2. So go ahead and pause the video, try it out, press play when you're ready to see if you got it right. For example 3, you should have gotten that the vertex was negative 1, 1. The axis of symmetry, x equals negative 1. The extrema is a maximum at 1. And for the y-intercept, it is 0, negative 2. Now we're going to go ahead and move into identifying characteristics when given an equation in vertex form. So again, I have the instructions here, so we're just going to simply follow them. Okay, so to find the vertex, and there is a typo on your paper, I believe, I'm not sure if you guys got the correct copy or the one that I messed up, but where it says the y value of the vertex, yours said negative 1 times k. That's not correct. It's just k. So please change that to where it just says k. So let's go ahead and identify our vertex. So there's no actual work that we have to do. This is in vertex form, so our vertex is very obvious. The x value of the vertex is negative 1 times h. So we see here that we have a minus 3 or negative 3. Well, the x value is 3. And now the y value of the vertex is just k. And for that k, we just have 5. So your vertex should be 3, 5. Now, just like before, the axis of symmetry is simply the x value of the vertex. So our axis of symmetry is x equals 3. just like before for the extrema, we're going to look at that A value. So our A value is here. Because this A is positive, we know that we have a minimum. And the minimum is at 5 because the extrema is simply the Y value of the vertex. Now, lastly, the only thing that we have to actually solve when we're given vertex form is for the y-intercept. And for that, we're going to plug 0 in for x. So we have 2, 0 minus 3 squared plus 5. So that's going to be 2, and then that's going to be negative 3 squared plus 5. Negative 3 squared is 9. So y equals 18 plus 5, which equals 23. So our y-intercept is 0, 23. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. I want for you guys to try example 2 on your own. Press play when you're ready to see what the answer is. For example 2, the vertex should have been negative 6, 8. The axis of symmetry is x equals negative 6. The extrema, there's a maximum at 8. And for the y-intercept, you should have gotten 0, negative 28. Let's go ahead and try example 3. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to see if you got it correct. For example 3, for the vertex, you should have gotten negative 1, negative 4. The axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. The extrema, there's a minimum at negative 4. And for the y-intercept, you should have gotten 0 and negative 11 over 3. Now, lastly, we're going to look at identifying characteristics when the equation is in vertex. I'm sorry, not vertex. That's what we just did, is in intercept form. So let's go ahead and take a look at our instructions. The first thing we need to do is find the zeros by solving for x. So I know that if I were to solve this, this would be x equals 3, and this would be x equals negative 3. Okay. Now, in order to find the axis of symmetry, it's halfway between the zeros. So we're just going to find the average of the zeros. So that's going to be 3 plus negative 3 divided by 2. Now, 3 plus negative 3 is 0. Divided by 2 is still 0. So that tells us that our axis of symmetry is x equals 0. Now we're going to go ahead and find our vertex. So the x value of the vertex is the axis of symmetry. Now to find the y value, we're going to plug that, to find the y value, we're going to plug this x value into the function and solve for y. All right, so that's going to be y equals 0 minus 3 and 0 plus 3. So y equals negative 3 times 3. So therefore our y is negative 9. So that tells us that our vertex is, our x value is 0 and our y value is negative 9. So the vertex is 0, negative 9. Now the extrema is the same as it has been. The extrema is because our A in the front here is positive, we have a minimum at, and that is the y value of the vertex. So a minimum at negative 9. And lastly, our y-intercept is we're going to plug in 0 for x and solve. But I'm not going to do that because we've just done this here. So our y-intercept is actually the same as our vertex, and that is 0, negative 9. All right, so I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed you guys along. So go ahead and try out example 2. Press play when you're ready to see the answer. For example 2, this is what you should have gotten. Axis of symmetry, x equals negative 2.5. Vertex, negative 2.5, 2.25. Y-intercept, 0, negative 4. And extrema is maximum at 2.25. Go ahead and try example 3. Press play to see the answer. For example 3, you should have gotten the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1.